Let me start off by saying what I do. I run the Veterans Office on campus at Lewis & Clark, and that's my primary function, although I also do, according to my business card, clean technology partnerships. That's kind of green stuff, you know. So I'll talk a little bit about Veterans Affairs first. That's my primary love at Lewis & Clark. I am a veteran myself of the Army, and then we'll move on to things like smart grid, microgrid, electric vehicles, that kind of stuff, if you guys want to hear any of that. So right now we have 250 veterans and military students at Lewis & Clark. That's up 70 from 2 years ago when I started. So our population is growing, and it will continue to grow as long as we keep bringing soldiers back from the war. And we have a huge military veteran population in Madison and St. Clair counties. So we're going to have a lot of veterans coming back, and they're looking for jobs, obviously, and a lot of them are looking for education to get a job. So at Lewis & Clark, as always, we're trying to meet the need, but anticipate the need as well. And so that's one of the reasons I'm involved in the smart grid stuff as well, to make sure we can train people fast enough for the co-ops and electric utilities like Ameren and others who might need these workers with these skills. And some of these guys come back, women and men, come back with skills that are directly transferable, some are not, so some need more training than others. So on campus, on the veterans side, we have a veterans club, and we raise money through fundraisers, and that's things like selling Krispy Kreme donuts. You know, I go over early in the morning and pick them up hot, bring them back and sell them. We sell 30, 40 dozen in about a 2-hour stretch when we do this. So lots of students and faculty staff like to get these donuts, so we make money doing that. Not a lot, but some. And one thing we did last year was partner up with the Dairy Queen in Bethalto. We had a little fundraiser for a couple of hours there where they gave us a percentage of the funds. We tried to get more people to show up for that time period, so that worked out fairly well as well. So, hey Brad, that's an old friend of mine. We also donate some money. So what we've done so far is donate money to the Edwardsville Veterans Memorial that's been dedicated a year or so ago, and we just dedicated some money to the Wood River Veterans Memorial. It's going to be dedicated coming up on the Veterans Day this year, 2 o'clock. So if anybody can make that, that'd be great. We also have blood drives on campus. We don't make any money doing that. That's one of the things the Veterans Club does. We work with the Red Cross. And we've done that for several years. What we did this year as well was partner up with the Red Cross and KC95 radio station. You may have heard in the past, the Alton Memorial Hospital had a big blood drive there a couple times a year. And they really ran out of space. They couldn't handle the volumes and the space they had available. So in August, and again coming up in December, twice a year, we'll have those on campus at Lewis & Clark now. So for an example, when we had a blood drive with just basically on campus, faculty, staff, students, very few people from the outside would come. We'd get maybe 50 pints of blood. So for this 2-day drive, we had 280 pints of blood. It's huge, a huge drive. Of course, KC provides on-air time and T-shirts and stuff like that, so a lot of people show up. It's a good deal, and the Veterans Club is glad to be part of it. Another thing we did just this year was open up a Veterans Resource Center. That's something that other colleges have done in the past, and it's always hard to come up with money and space on a campus, and Lewis & Clark is no different. We have a lot of buildings, but all the classrooms are taken, the office space is taken. So we found, after looking at off and on for several months, a room that hadn't been used in like 8 years, they said. And it was an old criminal justice crime scene room. So we opened it up, and it had been used for paint storage and stuff like that by maintenance. It had fake blood splattered all over the place, and part of the wall knocked out, and just fake guns laying all over the floor. So we cleaned it all up, and now we have a Veterans Resource Center. Couches, tables, a couple of computers. We have a TV in there that's not working yet. We haven't gotten any cable run to it yet. We're working on that as well. Bought a brand new flag to put in the window, so it's good. And I think veterans are starting to use it already, and it's nice to have, for them to have a space where they can come and kind of kick back, talk among some of their peers, and also use the computers without having to go to a computer lab at the library. And we have some bottled water there for them, so trying to make things good as we can for them when they have any free time. In general, we do a pretty good job of handling veterans' issues on campus. One of the things we don't have much control over is the Veterans Administration itself. We operate using the VA office in St. Louis. It's a regional office. There are 4 of those across the country. So you can imagine, for all the veterans' claims and benefits, there are 4 offices. Huge amounts of paperwork and electronic paperwork going into these offices, and things get bogged down. So we have issues every year, and fall is the worst for education benefits because all these colleges in this multi-state area are shoving paperwork into the VA. So we found this year that it's been extremely difficult for veterans to get their money on time, and they run out of funds. You know, Brad helps his organization in Madison County, and it's really tough on these guys because they're in school, but they're not the traditional student. They're older. They have a lot of times they're married. They have debt. They have cars. They have mortgages. They have things that people have that are already more established, and yet when they walk out of the military, all that safety and security they had is gone, and they're just kind of out there. They got to find a job or go to school and make some money. So it's really tough on them, and we're trying to do what we can to help them in terms of speeding up the process. We're also establishing an emergency loan fund just for veterans on campus. In the past, we have a fund, but it's been for all students, and they just kind of tap it as they can, and we run out of that money pretty quickly. But starting as soon as we can get things in place, we're going to have an emergency loan fund set aside just for veterans and military members. So I think that's going to be a really positive thing that we're going to establish on campus. Let's see. We also have a lot of veterans or not a lot of veterans, but some veterans now who are what we consider older veterans. The VA just announced a program this summer that took effect this fall for 45,000 veterans nationwide between the ages of 35 and 60 years old. And this is for those veterans who have either used up all their benefits education-wise in the past, or who let them expire. And you'd be surprised the number of veterans who did actually let their benefits expire and never got to use them. So these guys are able to come back for a year and get training at community colleges and technical schools. The 4-year colleges are not included in this because the program is to get students to get a 1-year certificate that will get them a job. Welding is a good example, maybe a computer skill of some sort, to get them into the workforce as quickly as possible. So the VA identified high demand occupations that they would pay to have these students go to school to learn. And we have 18 of those people on campus right now, which is a good number, and next year there's going to be 54,000 more applications approved, so we'll get some more next year as well. Now, these guys had to be unemployed when they got these grants given to them, and they have to go full-time. So there are those restrictions that are in there. They can work part-time afterwards, but most of them, if they could be working, would have already been working. So that's kind of the catch-22 there. But they require a lot more help because a lot of them are not familiar with computers at all. They don't know processes. They don't know how to go through even the community college setup, let alone the VA and all the other paperwork shuffles they have to go through to get their benefits. So it's a challenge for them and for us, but so far they're all still enrolled. Nobody's dropped out yet, so that's a good thing. And it's just another program that's out there now that veterans are taking advantage of here and elsewhere. As Brad knows, for example, we have a huge homeless veteran problem in the United States, and unfortunately we have homeless veterans around here. And we have some on campus. We have students that are, couch surfing. They're going from friend to friend. They don't have a place to stay. They're out of money, and finding a job for them or finding help for them is hard because no one has any money. The agencies are tapped out, and they don't have friends to call or parents to call and to give them money. If they could, some of them won't. They have their pride, So it's an ongoing issue. We have students that are experiencing that issue and don't have enough food to eat sometimes. So this emergency loan fund that I mentioned earlier, We'll also help them with those kind of things as much as we can fund it for, and try to bridge that gap. So that's kind of the veteran side in a quick nutshell synopsis. I don't have too much more time, but
you have 15 minutes.
Okay, so I'm always open to questions. If you have any questions about any of that, or as I start the next part, be sure and speak up or ask, and I'll stop and answer. Okay. Anything about veteran stuff that you don't already know or want to ask? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the other part of my job, and that involves things like smart grid, microgrid, electric vehicles, and those kinds of things. I spent a lot of years in the energy industry. I worked for Ameren for a lot of years, worked in Houston, and so when I came to Lewis and Clark, I had veterans as my primary responsibility, and as we got into these other things, they said, hey, how would you like helping out with this stuff too? So it's exciting, and veterans and this energy stuff are really a primary importance to me. I like this kind of stuff, so it's kind of fun doing it. Anybody heard about smart grid yet? Not too much, some. One of the things you might have heard, if you kind of put the things together, is that Ameren and ComEd last fall got a veto overridden in the override session, so that they were able to spend money to put smart grid technology in place in Illinois, and basically assure themselves that they would get reimbursed for that. Now that hasn't quite worked out the way everybody thought it would, because the legislation is now being interpreted by the Commerce Commission a little bit differently, but they are starting to spend money. And what they're trying to do is basically fix the technology that's out there to make the grid operate more efficiently. So in reality, you have a meter. That's the interface between the house and the utility, or the business and the utility. This meter in the past has been basically a really dumb meter, just watt-hour meter, just spins and records basic usage. Now industry has had smarter meters for a while because they look at lots of different variables in their energy bill, which would include on-off peak demand and the PTs and CT transformers that they have in place, all kinds of stuff that they're familiar with. They get billed for that, based, good or bad. They get billed on how they use electricity. So the way things are going, if you put in a smart meter at house, for example, then the utility would be able to tell when you're using certain appliances, or when your bill goes up and down, and what things are causing that, depending on the way the house is designed and the wiring that's there. They would be able to take that information and determine how best to serve your house, your community, this area at a time. And when they have an outage, they'd be able to know exactly where the outage is. No more calling in to say my lights are out. They would know immediately every house that's out and every house that's on. Sometimes we see the house across the street's on, we're off, and we're like, what's up with this? And so then you call, they don't call, and you see lights come on over here, yours are still out. And you keep calling and saying, hey, I'm still out. Or Ameren would call and say, we show you back on. If that's not right, call us and tell us. With this new technology, they'll be able to know instantaneously who's out, who's on, and when you come back on or not. So they're spending a lot of money right now, Ameren, for example, on their side of the meter. They're upgrading all the technology in their substations and in their transmission distribution systems so that they can sense what's going on. They can tell if a transformer is overheating. They can shut it down, reroute the power around it. If there is an outage, they'll automatically reroute instead of guys going out, pulling levers, replacing fuses, stuff like that. They'll still have to fix those problems, but they'll isolate them down to a very small area as opposed to having even a whole subdivision off, let alone half a town. So it's good technology. It's going to cost some money, but the benefits, I think, are there over time. And on your side of the meter, then you'll be able to take advantage of pricing. So that if you want to run your dishwasher and stuff at a certain time of day, then you'll get to do that at a cheaper price or not, depending on what you choose to do. Your thermostat can be set not only to calibrate for when you're gone and when you're not there, but also on a price signal. So even if you're there and it would normally come on, if it reads a price signal that's too high, it won't come on. It'll stop, or it'll cycle so that it takes advantage of the demand portion of the bill. So it's good technology, but it's going to take a while to get it into place. There are some people who think that this is too much like Big Brother because the utility knows too much about what's happening on the usage side of the meter. But whenever they see that information, it just goes into a big computer program that processes it. They don't really care the name of the person that's feeding the information in. They just want to know where it's coming from and how much energy is being used. But there are people who are not in favor of the smart meters. One of the reasons is because it does cost a lot of money and they're not sure they're going to get the benefits from it. But it's been pretty much proven that the benefits are there. It will just take time for everything to kind of gel. So smart meters are just a part of the smart grid structure. Another thing that we're working on at Lewis and Clark, along with the Illinois Institute of Technology up in Chicago, is a microgrid system. This is a system where we will be able to isolate the campus from the Ameren service and run it by itself. So we would have to have some generation on campus. We already have solar photovoltaic cells on some of our buildings now. We have to have generation on campus, and that could be wind turbine, probably gas-fired turbine as well. And we will be able to just isolate ourselves and run, which would be good for us because that way we could have classes, we could make it a safe place to come. We have a lot of space, so it could be a really good thing. More than anything else, it will be a teaching tool for our students and probably for Ameren workers. We've talked to them in some detail about workforce training for new people and for incumbent workers because they have to train their own workers to get up to speed on smart grid stuff. They're building a facility down in Belleville. They just opened an office in Collinsville. So on the metro side, you know, they have their own stuff in Missouri. This is just Illinois. And so we're working with them to see if us forming this microgrid would be something they would take advantage of. And that will be good for us because then we have a place to put our students, and hopefully into Ameren jobs, or the local co-ops that have the same issues on a smaller scale. So this microgrid system is still in the thought process because, again, it would take money to put in a generator, and we wouldn't run it all the time. It would be for a teaching, or in an emergency situation, which, you know, can happen from time to time. So those are some kind of big topics.